Hi, my name is Kevin Thomas, W1DED. I'm back with the contest crew, Randy, K5ZD, Chris, KL9A, and Bill, W9KKN. Unfortunately, Dan could not join us this evening. He's working a 15-hour day, apparently, so it's just the four of us. But before we get started, a quick thank you to DX Engineering for supporting Q5 Worldwide Ham Radio. Their CEO, Tim Duffy, K3LR, is a strong advocate for sharing the human side of amateur radio, whether it's contesting, DXing, parks in the air, or building your first antenna. DX Engineering helps make these conversations possible. Our mailbag has been increasing with questions from viewers, so we thought we'd just attack that list today and get through some of the questions. And Randy, per usual, is going to start with you. There's been several questions about what's going on in Ohio. Could you give us a rundown on what your station is looking like there and what your plans are?
I'm making progress. I have a radio room built into the back end of a garage right now, and tomorrow some contractors will come over to put 220 volts into the room, and at that point I'll have a room that's got all the power that it needs and all the lighting that it needs and air conditioning and everything. So great, part one. As far as the station goes, I was very lucky 6 weeks ago to get the holes dug and the concrete poured. And this past week, I got the first 10 feet of tower up on it for both towers. And one of them has the temporary guys on it. So that was really good to get done. My problem now is I need to find some help because I need a ground crew to be able to pull sections up to me. Because if I don't find somebody, I'm liable to try to do it by myself, which would probably be a big mistake. But anyway, so that's kind of where I'm at. I think the real thrust of the question, though, is, when you, or at least to me, what's interesting is not where we are, but it's how we got here. And that comes from, okay, I have a piece of property, it's a certain size, it is a certain height. Step one, what do I want to accomplish? What were my goals for the station? And for me, it's primarily I've been telling people, I want to be loud enough. I want to be loud enough that I can call people and they can hear me. I want to be loud enough that I can call CQ and people will call me. But I'm under no illusions that I'm trying to build a top 5 winning single op or multi-single station here. So once I kind of agreed or talked myself into the fact I need to downsize, it really came down to, okay, so what can I do? And I'm thinking 2 towers, 80 feet each. And I arrived at that height by doing the HFTA terrain analysis from the antenna book, and that seemed to be a good height that works given the ground slope that I have towards Europe and kind of the neutral ground in all the other directions. And I want to have monobanders on 40 and 20 and 15, and then a big tri-bander that I can use for 10 and some of the other bands, and then of course it'll be wires for everything else. So it took a couple of weeks of running through HFTAs and all kinds of different height combinations and so on, but that's how I ended up at the 280-foot towers. Even though I have the stuff to do 2 100s, I just don't want to get into any more height than I need to, given that I'm trying to downsize. So I've got all the antennas. I have a barn full of stuff. You wouldn't believe how much aluminum is out there, and now the next job really is to find help to stack the tower and then get some antennas built so I can see if I can find a boom truck that can come out and get everything raised up. But that's where we're at.
And do you have a target date, Randy?
I'd like to get everything working by September. There's actually no reason that can't be done other than because I'm the kind of person that once I start a project like this, I'll just keep going out there every day and doing something to progress things. Probably the biggest challenge will be just getting all the antennas, finding all the pieces and getting them all built correctly, and then making sure I've got all the feed lines and everything ready to go so that if a crane does show up, we're putting antennas on top of the tower with feed lines so that I can reach them from the rotor loop and then be able to do everything else after the fact. I'm fighting myself almost every day when I'm thinking about things of how do I keep things simpler and not go crazy and try to build more than I really can handle or want.
A close second to the questions about Randy's station is Montana with you, Chris, and just an update on what's happening in Montana.
Well, I'm a little jealous of Randy's power and air conditioning and all the wiring because it's a luxury I don't have. So that's cool. Also, I don't really understand the do more than you need to downsizing thing. That doesn't really compute, but I guess I understand.
It's because you're on the upslope of the
Yeah,
built station building.
I'm still too naive to know better. On that note, I have to fix everything because everything I have is broken. So the plans are bring most of the Yankees down during field day and replace them with not broken ones that are kind of re-optimized and sturdier for the winter times. The 80-meter Foursquare hopefully goes up during field day. And then I work on the inside stuff. The switching walls getting totally redone. My coax entry panels getting totally redone. And everything I need is up there. I have everything available for all these projects. I just have to do it. But I don't get to work on it every day. I get 2 days a week, which turns into about a day and a half, actually. So we have plans. We just don't have a lot of time. So it'll get done when it gets done. That's kind of where I'm at.
Yeah, and that's a huge difference, an advantage you have when you live at where your station's going to be, because you can go out and pick off things an hour at a time in the evening when the temperature's nice, and you don't have to. If you forget something, it's no big deal. You're just going to the hardware store the next day to find it. So it takes a lot more planning and just stretches out over more time. So Chris, the one thing you said with the antennas are broken. One of the things I try to do building a station is I want to try to do everything as right as possible. And so, for example, on my station in Massachusetts, the 2 antennas that were at the top of the first tower, when I brought them down, that was the first time they'd come down since 32 years ago when I put them up. Didn't mean that they hadn't had various nits or things happen to them that I needed to do repairs on the top of the tower, but they stayed up there. And part of that is just you kind of, it's easy to get into this and go fast, and then you get to do stuff again. And if you don't really know where you're headed, then fast may not be so bad because you can always see what works and then adjust. But it's worth trying to spend a little bit of extra time making sure that everything is put together at the right dimensions and everything has sheet metal screws in it so it won't come apart and it won't twist when you grab hold of an element as you're raising antennas and that kind of stuff. So that's really the thing that takes the most time, is just making sure everything is exactly right.
That's the plan. This tower went up so late in the year that I had all these antennas already, and it was like, screw it, throw them up. I got to make some QSOs. We will deal with it next year, and now it is next year.
Yeah,
So
well, you won the sweepstakes with it, so you can't complain.
Hey, won the sweepstakes, did really good in 10-meter contest. Guys had fun. It was worth it. Because honestly, bringing them down and repairing them is not that big a deal. I don't have any trees, and the tram system is like super slick. It just takes a couple of people with me, so we can pull all the antennas down and put my new ones up in a half a day. I just got to build the new antennas. So yeah, you're right. Doing it right the first time is definitely the way to go. And that was a known mistake in about October, but whatever. It is what it is. We had a lot of fun this year.
The next question has to do with WRTC. The person was asking, is qualifying over? And if so, who's going? Do we know who the teammates are? What is the update on WRTC?
So the qualifying is over. The ARL DX phone contest back in the beginning of March was the last qualifying event. The invitations for who they're inviting as the team leaders haven't gone out yet because they're still waiting for the results from some contests to come out so they can finalize everything. But you can get a feel for what the standings are to date if you go to the WRTC UK 2026 website and look at under the menu for qualifying standings. You can see for each of the geos, like I'm in North America 1, but you can go to any of the geos around the world and see who the top qualifiers are with the scores that are in so far. Most of the regions, I think, are pretty well decided, but there's a few that are still too close to call. And then, of course, once they issue the invitations, you may have cases where somebody who's qualified to be a team lead decides to be a team partner, in which case the next person down the list becomes eligible for invitation. So there's still a little bit of moving around that can happen just depending on how people pair off.
Is there a date when those teams are finalized?
Yeah, I'd have to read the rules, but First, the invitations go out to the team leads. The team leads have some amount of time to pick who their teammate is, and they submit that to the qualifying committee. The teammates have to have had a certain qualifying score to be eligible. But pretty much at that point, things are set. Now, obviously, life interferes, so sometimes people can't go. The team lead can't go, or the teammate can't go, and so things really can switch around almost to the last minute. But most of the teams want to try to get settled on their partner, and so they can start working on practicing and equipment and so on.
Next question had to do with the Contest Online Scoreboard. People were asking offline, I've seen a lot of this online also, but offline, what it was going to take to get more of the top performers to use the Contest Online Scoreboard.
That's an interesting question because guys don't participate for various reasons. And I think that's different for everyone. Some people think it's just stupid because change is hard and those guys are just silly. But there are, let me put this diplomatically. There are probably some there are probably some legitimate reasons that some teams don't post if the competition is super tight and maybe some borderline unethical things that their competition can or cannot do that would change the outcome. So if everyone did it, it wouldn't be a problem, but guys always find a way to bend the rules, and unfortunately that's just human nature. So I think some of the guys that don't post do that for that reason, and then the other ones do it just because change is hard.
I think there's another reason too, somewhat change related, but the scoreboard can be an incredible motivator. It can also be an incredible demotivator. So nobody who's put a lot of energy and thought into a contest and preparing and so on, and suddenly they get off to a bad start, or the other guy gets off to a great start, and suddenly they're way behind, and they're like, there's a point in every contest where you're like, why am I doing this? And that's the moment where the scoreboard can help you or hurt you. Usually if you're doing well or you're competitive, it's a motivator. I'm going to chase that guy down, or I'm ahead, I'm going to keep working to stay ahead. But if you're way behind and you're having that, why am I doing this moment? It's easy to go, I'm going to lose anyway, the heck with it.
Well, but that doesn't change if you're not posting or posting. You can still look at it and see how, you're doing compared to somebody else.
True, but I've seen one example in my life where a guy quit posting because he's like, other people know my score, and so it actually motivates them to operate more, and motivated them to operate more so that they beat me. And so therefore, by giving my score out, I actually hurt myself. I guess this is it's a real scenario, so it did happen once. Yeah. But at the same time, it's like, you would have lost anyway in some way. You can't really look at it like giving your score out is a problem. Some people just like the secrecy. They just like the big reveal at the end. Longtime contesters lived in that your bubble of your station where you knew nothing until the end of the contest. And so that was kind of part of the culture. I think that's starting to break down now. I think people like the more instant gratification. I think there's a lot of people who just don't know how easy it is. Like almost every logging software now, you can probably post your score with less than 10 clicks. If that many. You go to I want to post my score online. It already defaults to the score posting server. You put in, it already knows your call from when you set up your log, knows your category. All you got to do is check the box that says, send my score. And there's really two options. You can say, send just my score, or send my score and all my QSO and multiplier information. So even if you're leery about somebody being able to see what you're doing, just don't send that stuff in. Just send your score. But I think it makes the game more fun. I wish more people do it. I've been really surprised at how slow the uptake has been. Because I use it the most actually when I'm doing a part-time effort. Because I love being able to be at a place and see, okay, I'm equal with these guys. And then I go away for 6 or 8 hours, and I come back, and I see where they are above me. And I go, okay, well, let's see if I can make some progress. Or let's see who's around me now that I can race with until I get ready to take my next break. So I actually think it's more valuable to a part-time guy to putting more time in the chair than to somebody who's full out, because they're going to do the whole time anyway.
I think the fastest way to have more people use it would be to just make it the default in the logger, and then see who turns it off.
Well, not everybody has internet. We have to acknowledge it's not everybody's connected.
In that case, it would just not work. It would just not post. It's okay.
We're getting there. It's just, I think Chris put his finger on it. There's just a lot of people where it's something different, and they don't understand it, and they don't know what they have to do, and so there's probably some education that needs to happen.
The next email was regarding live streaming contests. This particular emailer had noticed a conversation online from somebody in the U.S. who was promoting the idea of live streaming contests, and they were curious what the contest crew felt about that.
I think it's had all kinds of problems. So, some people I think would actually call just to hear themselves on the live stream. And then the question is okay, if you've got this you've got this person who's promoting their stream heavily, like maybe they're buying clicks or ads or something like that. Did the contest really just become about that and not actually people hearing you on the radio and calling you for that reason? Because that is a little, at least to me, unfair to the other participants that aren't live streaming. But again, are you going to have a large number of followers that are watching these live streams? It's possible, and some of them may be very interesting. Like I would have loved to watch Chris, actually operate, since I wasn't actually playing at all, so it would have been interesting to watch. But on the same token, I don't want to force people to live stream, and I don't, you got to be a little careful, because there are cases where maybe your frequency shows up or something like that, and then you're self-spotting, which is fine in ARRL contests, but in CQ, that's a good way to get disqualified. So lots of issues there, and I don't know that it would suddenly create this huge demand of people coming into the hobby. Maybe, posting the recordings afterwards, that might be interesting, but then you have problems like, okay, am I going to go find my QSO and find out what number you sent me and clean up my log later? Lots of problems there.
Guys have done it. There's some contests, and I couldn't tell you which, are okay with it. All of Bill's concerns are valid, I think. I think it would be one of those things where maybe somebody tuned in for 5 or 10 minutes and then got bored with it. It's not like they're going to sit down for 48 hours and watch a guy.
Yeah, one of the reasons the ARRL has the self-spotting rule is exactly because there was one participant who was live streaming their contest operation. They were doing, a single band 20 meters, and they had quite a following, and there were a lot of guys who tuned into the live stream and then called them and gave them a QSO. I have no idea what the numbers are. No, I never saw any analysis about anything like that, so it's hard to tell whether there was actually an advantage gained or not. But it just created a big discussion, and I think in the league's case, and I don't know who all was involved in the decision, they just punted the whole thing and said, we can't figure it out, let's just let everybody self-spot. I don't see the CQ contest going that way in the foreseeable future. But I will say this, 20 years ago, I live streamed a number of my single op efforts on CW. On just audio only. This would be before video streaming was so common. But KM3T had a streaming service, and so he plugged me in, and I advertised, here's the URL, you can come listen anytime. It was on a little bit of a delay, so people couldn't listen to figure out. But we definitely had what Bill talked about. There were a number of people who showed up, who called in, I think because they wanted to hear what they sounded like. No question. Hard to tell how many or whether it was in much of an advantage or not. I had one guy write me a very nice letter after the contest where he was stuck in the hospital, and he listened to me almost for the whole day, and he had all these notes he had taken as I was operating and so on. So in that regard, giving somebody the ability to listen in on the contest was really great. I think another thing, I used to take the recordings after we did the live stream, and then I posted them on my website so people could listen. And I think there were a lot of people who just had no idea what it takes to do a DX contest and the level of cacophony and calling and everything else that's going on that you have to deal with. And so it was a good way to kind of help people realize, what was the PGA or the NBA or something. These guys are good. So people got a chance to see that. So I'm not against the concept, but the idea that it tilts the playing field a little bit in that people figure out who you are and what band you're on and kind of where you are, and then they call in to hear how they sound. There's something about that we have to figure out how to solve, and just not displaying the frequency is not enough.
Yeah. I'll even say when I was getting started in contesting, I actively searched YouTube and a bunch of other places to, see if I could hear guys who are really good and just sort of watch what they were doing and learned a ton from that process. I mean, there's a few people that just have their videos out on YouTube and you search for them and you can hear yourself or hear, exactly what, kind of watch what they were doing, how they were working in the shack and such. And I would love to see more people post their recordings. That would be amazing.
I can do that. I've got 5 or 6 or 10 or 50 contests recorded on my Google Drive. I just don't have a good place to do it and an easy way to access it. But I like to listen to them every now and then.
I post mine I have an AWS storage, and the recordings are all in AWS, and I just link to them from my website. I think it costs me either 18 or 33 cents a month for the few people who pull something down, so it's not a big expense, and I'm happy to share. I've had a number of guys tell me they listen to them when they're in the car or driving between jobs or something like that.
So the next question actually came from a couple different people, worded differently, but it gets down to the same thing, and that is serious contesters seem to be spending most of their time in the extra class frequencies rather than moving up into the general and picking up more QSOs. Your thoughts about that? Is that true? What are the decision path when it comes to that?
That's a good question, and it's probably not the answer they want, but we talk about frequency selection a ton. And let's look at a DX contest. The rate is always better lower in the band than it is way up high. You might have a clearer frequency up high, and there's some advantages to that, but being lower in the band is always better. So I know some of the questions came up from me last weekend. Why was I not in the general band on 80? Well, I looked at my log today, and I was in the general band quite a bit on 80, but the band wasn't open to the US, so it didn't matter. And when the band was open to the US and I was on 80, it was also open to Europe. And the rate was better lower in the band to Europe, and cumulatively was better. There's a very small subset of guys, I'm talking CW here, that are generals that are above the band, and I typically try to get that. That's a strategy. Working at 14025.5 or 026 is primo. That's a coveted spot, and guys absolutely try to hit that, but it's just not always feasible, especially on 80 and 40, where there's so much QRM and so much other stuff. Now, if you're doing sweepstakes or any QP, yeah, you're going to be in the general band, or you're not going to win the contest, period. Or if you're on phone and you work in US, you definitely want to try. So there's some frequency selection is a big deal, and they are correct that working generals is part of the strategy, but it's not always the best strategy depending on where you are. My advice is do what I had to do and get frustrated to no end and then upgrade to extra. That solved my problem because I hated it. There was so many guys I couldn't work because they were below a 25, and it drove me crazy. But yes, working generals is very much a strategy that people use.
The other question that usually comes along with this one is, why does everybody send so fast? Like, oh, I hear these guys CQing over and over again. Nobody's answering them, but I can't copy them. And if they went slower, more people would answer them. And while there is some truth to that, again, it depends very much on the contest. So if a contest like sweepstakes, domestic contest, activity limited, you need to eke out every QSO. Yeah, you start fast because you want to shovel people as fast as you can. But by Sunday, man, you'll send any speed that it takes to get somebody interested. At the same time, DX contests are a completely different animal. From the US, we're trying to work people in the rest of the world. And on CW, a lot of times, the rest of the world really means Europe and Eastern Europe. And those guys know the code. And so you can send faster, and there's a lot of them. And some people just like to send fast all the time. I generally will slow down as the rate slows down just to see who else I can bring in. But there is kind of a minimum of 20. 28 feels like it molasses. Feels really slow in a DX contest. At the same time, it depends a lot on propagation. If you're on 80 or 40 and there's a lot of noise, you're going to send slower. But most ops are trying to send at the speed that generates the highest rate for them. Now, they don't know who's listening out there, who's afraid to call them or unable to call them because they can't copy. And so every op has to kind of make his own internal calculation of, gee, am I in the right place? Am I going the right speed? That kind of thing. Now, if we flip it around, if it's like a ARLDX contest and I'm in Europe and I want to work W's, if you actually look, most of the guys do gravitate up into the general band because the bottom of the band is often filled with W's who are CQing. And also they know that's where the people are. So almost every contest, the serious DX contest guys, like all the 2B SIQ guys in CW, they all want to be up high in the band, partly to have less QRM for themselves, but that's where the people are. So it's not as, I think in the end, Chris's answer is the only, unfortunate, it's the only real one, which is you just got to upgrade if you want access to the whole band and don't want to have to try to find the guy when he spends his hour or 2 hours up where you can work him. And all this is even double true on phone. The US guys all want to be low in the band because they can run Europe. A lot of people tune from the bottom up on phone, on upper side bands, so the top 3 bands. So the lower you are, the better chances are you'll get somebody before their wife calls them and tells them they have to go to the store. On 40 and 80, it's just a mess, so you kind of get in wherever you can. But that's why people tend to gravitate to where they are. But even there in a DX contest, when I'm outside the country, I want to be in 28,300 to 28,500 in the afternoons when the band's open to the US because that's where the people are. And I want to be above 21,350 because it's a little quieter up there and that's where the people are. So the good guys understand the license limitations in the US and they try to take advantage of them. There are a lot of guys who don't understand that and we can't help them.
Well, and remember that a large amount of activity is not always better. I mean, that QRM can be destructive if you have enough people calling you. Sometimes it is worth it to go lower in the band or go away, from other stations so that you have a little bit of, you can at least hear the calls that are coming in, and they're not all on top of each other, zero beat and completely destroying each other, and you have to get a bunch of repeats, and your LCR shows it. I mean, it may not be worth it. It's a very dynamic decision that changes throughout a contest and depends on who you're talking to and when and why.
This next question is for Chris. Do you think the contest is only for fun or a sport? And then the extension to that question is, if it's a sport, are we going to be able to attract an audience?
It's a fun and a sport. I guess for me, it's gonna sound terrible. I don't get to operate every weekend. I only get to operate select weekends. So if I'm going to get on, I'm going to do it seriously. And winning is the fun part. Being serious about something is the fun part. And I prefer that in a multi-op, which makes it extra fun. But is it a sport? I don't know. Not really. It's sporting. But it's something that people put a lot of effort into and a lot of practice and a lot of money and time, and that definitely qualifies. The last part of the question, I mean, I don't know. I guess see what the other guys have to say about attracting people, but there's a lot of ideas out there about how to attract people and how to get more traction. And so far, I haven't really seen a whole lot of action on some of those. So I'm looking forward to seeing some of these ideas come to fruition and see how they work, because we need to try something. There's a lot of opinions there. I guess that's kind of vague, but that's my opinion.
So what are those ideas, Chris, that you've been hearing?
Well, I'm glad you asked, Kevin. We just spent a couple days in Dayton talking to guys about such ideas, but everybody starts talking about gamifying everything, and I know we had some interviews here about that, but it kind of got expanded a little more recently. And gamifying is cool. It kind of goes along with live streaming and all that stuff, but when it boils down to is how do we get people to stay on for more than 5 or 10 minutes? Everyone can get on and try something, but if it's going to keep them hooked, that's different. So it's my opinion that the experiences and the people and all that cool stuff will keep them, while the magic of radio and all the other stuff kind of gets them there in the first place. So I don't know if we can make it more interesting to the casual operator. That's the key because guys are always going to be serious. It's the casual ops that really make the QSO totals. So I don't know. We'll see.
I'm going to go back and answer the question in a different way. It's a game. It has a time box. It's got rules for how you score points. We keep track of points and we do some verification and we stack rank the scores at the end. Now it becomes a sport because people do invest time and energy and effort and practice and so on to get better at it. But participation, it's not a sport that's going to have Super Bowl audience. It's just not a sport that's fun to watch. It's a sport that's fun to do. There are lots of people who hike the Appalachian Trail or go climb Mount Washington all the time. I'm never going to be one of those guys. That has no interest to me at all. But there are people who see people do that and they get inspired and they go do it, and that's awesome. I think what contesting does is drive activity into a box on a certain time, a weekend, of a certain type of people and a certain target geo. And the people who want to have the thrill of making QSOs with people in that geo or make a lot of contacts or whatever motivates them, they come play the game. And I'm not sure there's a lot we can do to push people in. It's more like they have to be hams. They have to be interested in talking to people far away or chasing states or what. They have to have some other motivation that they discover contesting as a place that can help them achieve some of their goals, improve their operating skills, meet some cool people, give them reasons to build bigger stations or more stations and evaluate how they're doing. There's lots of great spin-offs that come from this, but most of it doesn't come from having more people watching. It comes from more people doing.
Yeah, and I think getting the word out and encouraging activity is the key to that. POTA, we've talked about that at length. Stuff like that gets people hooked. First one's free, kid. That's kind of what we're looking at. And I think contesting gets guys active in other stuff and regular things just as much as regular guys can get hooked on contesting just by being exposed to it. So it goes both ways. One way is not the answer. It's kind of symbiotic.
What I love is field day is still the gateway for contesting. It's the best vehicle we have to attract people and it help them understand what's going on. And it amazes me every time I do a QSO party and I get on 20-meter phone and I call CQ and guys call me and they give me the exchange I'm looking for like it's no big deal. And they're call signs I have never heard before, which tells me there are a lot of people out there who somewhere in their life have experienced contesting, seen it, understand it, get the whole concept of, hey, we're trying to work people as fast as we can. So in that regard, I think contesting is doing pretty well. But it is a game that requires more participation and some contests have quirks in them or have things in them that maybe limit the activity or filter out people in an unfortunate way. But all this stuff about, well, we got to do live streaming or real-time scoring or all this kind of stuff to bring in more use, I just don't buy it. What we need to do is appeal to the people that are already coming into ham radio, and I don't care what age they are. Yes, it's nice if they're younger. I know in 1973 when I came in, there were a lot of other guys that were about the same age as me, and we had this whole cohort that just kind of moved up together. It'd be great to repeat that, but that may not be the same these days. So we need to take the people that we can get and introduce them to the game and hope they stick.
Yeah, it's just like golf. It's just like bowling. It's just like car racing. There are people that do these things casually, and there are people that do these things seriously as a sport. And you're always gonna have somebody who goes to golf for business networking or just for fun, to drive around in a golf cart all day and have a couple beers. There are some people that are Tiger Woods, and they're going to try to be the best that there ever was. Same with bicycling, same with just really any sport. And the question is, okay, if you give it more coverage on TV, if you promote it more, do you get a little bit, do you get some return on investment? Sure you do. But a lot of a lot of it is does it look fun? Does it look like something that I can do? Is it accessible? Are people willing to let me come operate their station? A lot of that just requires investment by the people who are already doing it to convince other people that it's something that they should do too. And that's why things like the scoreboard help. That's why things like even that's why we're here on this program now, is to show people, hey, this is how much fun we're having with this. Please do it more. Help us help you.
So I know I'm supposed to be asking the questions and not giving the answers, but I got to jump in on this one. I think that the other gateway, Randy, is Parks on the Air. I agree about Field Day, but I literally know Parks on the Air activators that are now getting into contesting because they went to a park, they set up, they operated for an hour and a half, and they put 220 QSOs in the log, and they loved the pile up, and now they're contesting. And maybe not at your levels, but they're getting started and they're winning rookie awards. So I think that is a gateway. The other thing that I'd add is if you look at participants in contesting and then observers, in both cases, people need to know who the players are. Any sport that we follow, we know the players. And I think what I've noticed as a newcomer, if you're in the contesting community, the three of you know the players and you kind of get excited about it. You know where they're operating, if they're going to do a multi-op or a single op. And I think it enthuses you and you're in that community. I think it's important to introduce those players, and we're doing that here, but I think we need to do more of it. If I look at the Contest Online Scoreboard and I know who Baracco E77DX is, then that score all of a sudden matters to me. But before I knew who that was, it didn't really matter. I'd maybe look at Chris's score, Randy, your score, Bill, if you're down at ZF1A. But the more people that we know, the more players we know, and the more the background we know, I think either as a participant or an observer, the community starts to expand. That's just my opinion.
Yeah, I think POTA and SOTA are definitely energy sources in ham radio, HF operating right now. No question about it. I should have mentioned them in addition to Field Day, but it's a great thing for getting people on the air and starting to build some of these skills and get them hooked, just like you said. I also think, to reference your thing about who are the players, some of the stuff you're doing with this, Q5 is doing with the Substack posts and so on, and especially the fast follow-ups right after the contest where you pick a few stories and try to cover them. That's been probably the biggest challenge for contesting, especially doing contest write-ups as a contest sponsor, is finding the stories. It's easy to write the boring write-ups as X beat Y, beat Z, conditions were good, conditions were bad, so Q beat R, blah, blah, blah. But the real stories of this guy never done this before, he went to this place, he had these catastrophes, the wind was howling 40 miles an hour in the fog, but he still worked on the antennas. That's the stuff that makes it interesting, and that's been the thing that I know in the case of the Worldwide and the WPX, we've been trying to find more of those kind of stories. So the more Q5 can dig some of those out and start to have people contribute them. I love reading about other people's contest efforts because it's just fun to imagine what they were going through as they did it. And that's probably the biggest thing that we don't see. So much of contesting is personal, out of sight, in your little bubble, and you don't broadcast it. You don't raise your hand at the club meeting and go, wow, man, I had the worst weekend you could imagine. But that's probably the most interesting story. So we just got to all be sharing more.
Well, I think what happens when I say we, as the contest crew or Q5, is we highlight these stories, I think other people will start contributing their stories. I've seen it already because I write something up and all of a sudden I get an email or a Facebook message with a couple of photos and a little bit about what's going on. And I think that's going to continue in the future as long as there's an outlet for it. And I think Q5 will provide that outlet.
Everybody wants to know that, yes, it was equally hard and we were all equally inept when we started. It's not you.
Or still.
Any final comments or topics before we wrap up, guys?
No, these were great questions today. I really enjoyed it.
Very good.
Yeah.